much in here. The creatures react and fight and scrap. This is an example of exactly recognising where your system can get better. Hey there, it's Christian, and we've got another review for you. This is for Sword Sorcery Ancient Chronicles, a new standalone core set for the Sword Sorcery system. And this is the fantasy MMORPG 1 to 5 player co-op dungeon crawl style adventure game. Now this is a new core set. I actually did a review of Sword Sorcery, the first set, the Immortal Souls campaign set. But if you don't know anything about the system, that might be the first one to go and have a look at. Because today I'm going to focus mainly on the differences, the additions, the omissions, and really the changes that we see and the differences between the two core sets. I backed this. This is a Kickstarter, only recently delivered. And not only have you've seen the basic box, the retail version box, as I imagine that's going to be, but also for Kickstarter backers, you've got this great big chest thing. I've taken the lid off, but there's all sorts of things in here and extra boxes and bits and pieces. Now, I'm going to talk about the components, and I have to say, when it comes to the actual Kickstarter stuff, I was pretty shocked actually at the Kickstarter stuff. But I want to go first and talk about the retail set, the sort of the core box, as it were. And I think it's safe to say that in comparison again to the Immortal Souls and the first one, this second set is basically, the headline is, everything's better. That's really the way I'm going to put it. The minis, the miniatures, as you can see in the footage, they're very, very nice. Much, much better than the previous ones, which weren't bad, but they certainly didn't have a sort of a premium feel about them. Now, whilst the different coloured plastic, I think, is always going to hit the feel of whether you've got a premium miniature or not in your hands, ultimately, these are loads better than the ones that we had in Immortal Souls, and they were good. So, big upgrade on the minis. Tiles, the artwork is much better in this set. It's brighter, it's more engaging. The setting is very cool. It's the world of a sort of gigantic underground caverns that stretch off as far as the eye can see. A land of underground caverns. The characters that come in the box, some very cool ones. I really do like the ones that they've selected. I did wonder whether that first set, which had those slightly more traditional kind of archetypes, those traditional classes, whether they were going to do something really funky and weird, and interestingly enough, they've done the right thing, in my opinion. They've gone with similar archetypes, and then they've just done cool changes on that. Okay, so that whole sort of feel of still having, more of a tank, more of the sort of damage dealers, more of the healers and that sort of thing. But again, they're approaching it in slightly innovative ways in terms of the actual mechanics that you're using and the lore behind it. Characters, cool, love them. The thing is, and that's really everything in that core box it's good, and it's better certainly than it was in Immortal Souls, and it's kind of more of it, because now, big addition, you've got journeying to do in between your quests, your expeditions. And then you've also got cities to go and visit. You can go to settlements and visit locations and do exploration. All of that, really cool. And that is certainly something in the gameplay I'll touch on a little bit more. So in terms of the Kickstarter components then, now I had to pay 90 British pounds for this, albeit quite a long time ago now. It's been about 2.5 years, I think, they took to actually produce this and get it out. But I was floored, flabbergasted, amazed at the sheer amount of stuff that they have got in for that price tag. It's extraordinary. They have crammed it, box after box after box. We've got a challenge set where they give you alternate versions essentially of all the monsters in the base set. Yeah, literally. We've got minions, which are essentially replacing cardboard counters. You've got all these Nemesis characters, which are essentially your hero characters, but like an evil version of, or a good version of, if you're an evil character, and so on, things like that. You've got this spawn gates, so that they're swapping. Again, instead of using the fine cardboard count in the game, you get some lush bling. And then there's traits cards. You can change your characters. There's more. There's lots more items. There's more quests and ways of adjusting your characters. There is so much in here. There's these great big things. The remembrances. I haven't even actually finished getting stuck into those yet. There's so much in here for this money. I'm shocked. I didn't even mention the actual Kickstarter set, which has got another new character in that you can play with. A very cool character, I might add. There's an extra set of dice, and there's an extra critical hit bag thing. So, I mean, it's just lovely. They've even done extra thick card for your character sheets, because the character sheets in the retail set, well, they're not quite there. It is amazing the amount of stuff they've put in on that Kickstarter. So if you're looking at this and thinking, do I want to get this game, man, try and get hold of the Kickstarter version if you can, the Kickstarter stuff. It's worth it. And there's still the second wave to come. This is only the first wave. In the second wave, there's a whole new other campaign, and so it's going to be a sort of in a different setting. It's going to be in a frosty, snowy, wintry setting. My goodness, there is a vast amount of value here for the money. Okay, so the components are all marvellous and excellent, which they really are. So gameplay wise, I have to say at the start now that they have upped the ante on this one. It's more complex, it's more difficult, because you have got a little more to do with the creatures. There's a little more bookkeeping involved, certainly some of the earlier battles than there was in the earlier battles of Immortal Souls. Now these creatures have got greater variety, they're a little more interesting, they've got, I mean, again, creature AI in what they've written here and what they've done is outstandingly good and cool, and that remains an absolute strength of this. And again, I would say that they've improved on that in this set, most definitely. The creatures react and fight and scrap in a way that's even more believable and really cool and full of flavour, as they are using all of their powers and abilities to try and take you out. It can be very difficult fighting against these creatures. And that's, I think, a big thing that you want to keep in mind with this set. If you are new to Sword and Sorcery, I'm going to say go with Immortal Souls and look forward to Ancient Chronicles, unless you are willing to really put in a little bit of extra work in terms of getting your head around the rules to this already quite complex game system. I mean, I really like it because I played Immortal Souls, I know what it's like, but my reflection is that as a first thing that you come into in this game, unless you are an experienced gamer and have played other dungeon crawlers and are willing to put in a bit of time to learn the system, then it might be pretty tough going for the first quest or two. But I have to impress upon you, even more so than in the first game, the riches that await if you are able to learn the system and start living it and enjoying the extraordinary adventure that your characters are going on. It is a joy. It is an absolute joy. There is more pick your own adventure type sections in this. The Book of Secrets is much thicker. Okay, I mean, it's really chunky in this one. I mean, it's easily double the size. It may even be, I mean, it may be more than that than in the first one. So there's even more narrative, there's more choices, there's more things popping up, and there's more stuff to sort of adjust. There's more interesting things happening as each of the different quests develop. It's all brilliant. That's amazing and exciting. With all of this more, there's a slightly greater learning curve to really getting into the system. We've got journeys and cities now in the game. Ares games, yes. This is an example of exactly recognising where your system can get better and making those exact changes and those exact improvements. And it adds to the richness and the immersion and just the value of the time investment so much more, deepening, if you like, the experience of exploring and living in this lovely, wonderfully classic feeling fantasy role-playing world. The cities allow you to visit NPCs and to gain quests, kind of become almost like a set of mission hubs almost, and you can visit various locations and have encounters. Brilliant. They've even got a map in this one as well, which is really cool. I like this a lot. It's not open world. You're going to follow this through effectively, although there is at least one branch in the adventure. But this is cool. You get to see where you're going, and you get to kind of get the bigger picture of where these quests and these various adventures that you're setting out on, or where these cities and towns and villages that you're visiting along the way actually are, and how they fit into the overall world that you're in, which again really adds to the immersion. Love it. And character development. I mean, character development, fundamental element of any RPG, and this is still one of the very best games for doing it. For me, it feels like I'm leveling up my old EverQuest characters or my old World of Warcraft characters, because this really is that tabletop MMORPG feel, and that hasn't changed with the different classes effectively that we've got in this new set. It absolutely was a feature of Immortal Souls, that first one, and they've nailed it again here. Getting the new skills and powers and leveling up and so on in this, it's still just as good and just as exciting. And in fact, they've possibly smoothed out some of the inconsistency with getting weapons and armour that you might have had in the initial campaign, which some people had a small complaint about. And I think, again, they've just sorted that out and smoothed it out a little bit. And so generally everyone has good kit, good stuff that you're really excited to be using. And finally, another thing that I want to harp on about, it's the flavour of this game. It is gloriously old school classic feel. You'll get a sense of that from a lot of the artwork. I mean, just look at the main cover on the box there, which reminds me of old Warhammer Fantasy roleplay covers. I mean, crumbs, you could list a whole bunch of covers. Yes, it's that classic kind of 80s, 90s classic roleplay feel. And in some ways, that level of depth and richness that comes through the fact that we are now 2021 and we've got all these modern sort of aspects to our gaming have really filled it out. And so it has this tension between, I feel like I'm playing this sort of tabletop MMORPG and I'm managing all these skills and these powers, and we're working out our strategy and our tactics as we're going into every battle, and we're adjusting to the AIs and all this clever stuff. And yet it still feels like 1982, the sword and sorcery kind of thing that was a thing back then. It's just complex and deep and rich and glorious, and it's all just intoxicatingly good. But like, let's say, beer, to continue the analogy, it is an acquired taste, and you do need to work your way into it, which kind of leads me on to some of the things to be aware of when it comes to this game. And that is, this is still a game with a very taxing setup and set down time, and progressing through the campaign. It's hard work if you can't leave this setup. So be aware of that as the first thing. Secondly, I would say that the stamina that's sort of required in the early days of this is considerable, because you do have to get your brain in gear as to how everything works. I say it's like a MMORPG in the sense that a lot of the bookkeeping, of course, is done by a computer when you're playing those. Here, it's obviously not that level, but it's certainly a level. And so there becomes almost like a bit of a process. There becomes a flow that you need to get yourself into to keep a nice pace through the game. And I found that is something that sort of builds up momentum as you're going through the play session. And so the first couple can feel pretty slow. And so that is something to be aware of. And when it comes to learning the game, this has still got this very steep curve. And as I want to reiterate, I think it's steeper than in the first game. Once you get it, then you've got all the joys to come. The rule books themselves are big. It's not the easiest read. It's still not a very good index when you've got a massive game like this, which is a little frustrating. So I would be wholly encouraging you. I would get on the videos on YouTube and brush up on how to play these games. That's going to be your best way to learn it. Watch it played and then use that rule book for reference. So then becomes the final question of who's it for. In terms of your player count, I'd be saying solo players, you'll have the time of your life. Now, you must play 2 minimum characters, but that just allows you to experience a little bit more of the richness of the interaction between the different classes. And that's really cool. You know, working out what team you want to take on your adventure is going to be part of the fun. But solo, it's rich and it's wonderful, and you can just get lost and immerse yourself in this world. 2 players, I think, is probably your sweet spot. You've got a wonderful story to explore and enjoy together. I think with 2 players as well, it actually works quite well, each having 2 characters. And then you get to enjoy the sort of full party experience of having 4 classes all working together, and you know, you've got that sort of the fun tactics of being that's the group dynamics that you get from the EverQuest and the World of Warcraft and the so on and so forth. But I think having 4 individual players, each with 1 character, you're going to have a bit more downtime, although that's offset a little bit by the fact that the players run the AI for the different creatures. And I mean, you've got bigger battles, you're going to get, each of you are going to be using some of those monsters along the way, but it's still going to be a bit of downtime. And I think the increased decision-making time that comes from having 4 at the table is just going to grind it down that little bit too much, unless you've got a really experienced group or someone really on you, riding everybody, saying, let's get that through our turns. I don't even want to think about it at 5 players. I would say solo or 2 is your sweet spot. And that's really where I'm going to leave it for this, because as you can tell, I love this game. This is a fantastic system when you can have got your head into it and you've learnt it. The richness and the depth of experience that I have been enjoying through playing this, it makes this my favourite dungeon crawl game. And it's because it's not just a dungeon crawl game. Not only you outside, but you've got this now journeys and the cities added to it. It is all I want from this type of game, and I can do it cooperatively without the DM. It is a brilliant system with a steep learning curve, but once you get into it, I think there's pretty much unparalleled richness. And the fact that the depth of experience that I have enjoyed in my time working through these quests, adventuring through this brilliant old school fantasy world, it constitutes true cooperative MMORPG tabletop bliss. And so I am going to wholeheartedly recommend it. So if you enjoyed that, please do click a like. If you find it helpful in terms of deciding whether it's going to be for you and your group, brilliant. Please click like and subscribe for more videos like this. And until next time, keep enjoying your gaming.